Lipton Tea and Lipton Soup present Inner Sanctum Mysteries. Come on in, friends, into the Inner Sanctum. This is really a lovely place. A little kind of dark and cobwebby, but then the maid hasn't been around for some time. No, she was playing the numbers. Then her number came up. Why, through these portals pass some of the nicest people in the world. True, they're rather boring, but after all, they are deadheads. And I'll take a good old redhead deadhead any time.
Why, Mr. Host, are you finally admitting that you like the ladies?
Well, of course, Mary. Don't you know some of my favorite ghosts are girls? But I do wish they weren't so vain. Why, I know one who has pleats in her shroud. Not only in the front, but in the back, too. Yes, just in case she should turn over in her grave.
Oh, dear. There you go, talking nonsense again. I like talk that makes sense. Good common sense, like the things the tea experts say about Lipton tea. For instance, they say that Lipton's has a brisk flavor. And that's the truth, because Lipton's does taste fresh and tangy and full-bodied, never wishy-washy. And then the experts say that brisk flavor makes all the difference in the world when you're sitting down to a cup of tea. And, folks, that's absolutely right. That brisk flavor is the reason why Lipton's is such a comfort, why it actually makes good food taste better. Yes, folks, you just don't know how good tea can be till you've tried Lipton's. So buy a package of Lipton's and taste what you've been missing all this time.
And talking of time, friends, may I take a few years of your life? All right. Get ready to hear a gory little story entitled Boomerang. It's an original radio play written by a couple of Australian bushmen named Michael Sklar and Richard Manoff, and stars Martin Gable in the role of John Keeler. So, hitch up your chair, switch off the lights, and look out.
Help me. No one heard me. No one came. I lay there watching the blood ooze from the wound. My chest was on fire. The flesh where the bullet had entered was torn, shredded. And in my back there was a kind of numbness. I screamed, "Ah! Help! Help!" But no one answered. I was utterly alone, helpless, watching my life dripping drop by drop to the floor. Then the blackness closed in. When I regained consciousness, 2 uniformed patrolmen were bending over me, looking frightened and puzzled.
Suicide, Riley?
Either that or murder. Their voices seemed to come echoing over an aching void. I wanted to tell them how it had happened. I wanted to tell them about Bill Sloan and Helen and the airplane. I was frantic. I had to tell them.
He's trying to say something, Riley.
Poor guy. He can't talk. He's too far gone. I couldn't talk. I'd lost too much blood. My tongue was thick like cotton. My lips moved, but that was all. It was all shut up inside me. They would never know how it had happened.
Riley, it looks to me like murder.
Murder, yes, it was murder. And if only I could have spoken, I would have told them. About my nervous breakdown. About the sanitarium. That's where it began, back there in that plushy prison. I was locked up behind that big wall. And my wife and my partner, they had the chance to discover each other. And then when I came out, the doctor said I was cured. Their false solicitude. And all the while, suspicion was building up inside me. I was already suspicious that day. I caught them by surprise. I'd come directly home from my regular visit to the psychiatrist instead of returning to the office. Bill was there in the living room with Helen, my partner and my wife, laughing together. I closed the front door silently. The rugs muffled my footsteps. I entered the room suddenly, wanting to see their faces when they saw me.
What, darling?
Hello, Helen.
Why, John, how did you happen to come home in mid-afternoon? Why aren't you at the office?
I was thinking of asking you that question. Bill made some flimsy excuse, but I caught the look of guilt on his face. He was a bachelor, smooth with words, successful with women, and I was beginning to believe he had succeeded with my wife. Oh, I had evidence. There was the time a few nights later. Helen and I were going up to bed. As we passed the umbrella stand at the foot of the stairs, I noticed something. Helen, just a moment. This umbrella, it's Bill's.
Oh, is it?
Yes, it is. What's it doing here?
Well, he must have forgotten it when he was over the other day. Take it out of the office in the morning, will you, darling?
I made no reply. We continued up the stairs and went to bed. I waited until Helen was asleep, then crept out of bed and down the stairs. There was the umbrella. I reached out my hand, afraid to touch it, but I had to. The umbrella was still wet. It had rained that afternoon. I said nothing about it the next morning. Oh, I was suspicious enough, but I told myself I had to be absolutely sure. And then, that next night, it happened. Helen went out after dinner saying she had an appointment with her hairdresser. As the door closed behind her, I picked up the phone and dialed the number.
Hello? Crescent Beauty Salon?
Alberta, this is Mr. John Keeler. I'm calling for my wife to verify her appointment for this evening.
Mrs. Keeler? But, monsieur, she has no appointment for this evening.
Now, I was sure. Bill and Helen were together. I struggled to control my emotions. My head was whirling. I felt ill, weak. My heart was pounding in my chest. The room began to spin. First the floor lamp, then the chairs, finally the table, whirling around my head. I needed air. I forced myself out of my seat, stumbled across the floor to the window, and threw it open. The stars, too, were spinning, chasing each other in a mad race across the sky. I sucked the fresh air into my lungs, and slowly the stars resumed their normal positions. I drew my head back into the room, and then it struck me across the nostrils. Gas. The room was full of gas. Yes, I found one gas jet open in the kitchen stove. I fought against the logical conclusion, struggled against it all that night and into the next day. But I could no longer stand it by mid-afternoon. That open gas jet last night had been no accident. They were planning to have me put out of the way. Well, two could play at that game. I also could commit murder. I worked out a plan. First, the business trip to Buffalo that I'd been putting off for weeks. I could use that as my alibi. I called my secretary.
Yes, Mr. Keeler.
Miss Jackson, I've decided to go up to Buffalo tomorrow. Could you get me a drawing room on the 5 o'clock train?
I'll call the railroad station right now, Mr. Keeler.
A few minutes later, she called me back. I had the train reservation. So far, so good. I went to the bank, and from the bank to the airline terminal.
What can I do for you, sir?
I want a seat on the Rochester plane. The plane that leaves New York at 9:30 tomorrow night.
9:30. What is the name, sir?
Dunham. Roger Dunham.
Well, you're a lucky man, Mr. Dunham. It's the last seat on the plane.
Roger Dunham. That assumed name would prove my alibi. The details of my scheme were falling into place. I went home, and at dinner told Helen I was leaving for Buffalo tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Must you go tomorrow, John? Can't it wait?
I've been putting this trip off too long already. I'll leave straight from the office and come home the next afternoon.
Well, you're being a little inconsiderate. I'll be all alone here overnight.
Oh, come, Helen. You're not afraid of anything, are you?
Afraid? No, but
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll ask Bill to come over and keep you company tomorrow night. How'll that be?
Why, Why, that'll be fine.
Another cog in place. Another gear meshed. Now one last piece to move and the engine of my revenge would be complete. Yes, it was revenge now. Revenge for what those two had done to me.
Buffalo, eh? It's a good idea, John. The way your trip could combine business with pleasure.
Pleasure?
You've been rather tense lately. The change of the scene will do you worlds of good.
I'm sure it will. How about Helen? Can you make it tonight?
Tonight? Yes. I'll be over after dinner.
That day passed like a dream. With me, the sleepwalker in the center, going through all the motions correctly, but waiting for the evening. For I wasn't hunted now. Now I was the hunter. A little past 4 o'clock that afternoon, I left the office and took a cab to the station. I went directly to my drawing room, and as the train pulled out, I called for the porter.
At midnight, sir?
Just a glass of milk, porter, warm milk. And don't bring it before midnight. Till then, I've got a lot of work to do, and I don't want to be disturbed.
Just as you see, sir.
I gave the porter an unnecessarily large tip to make sure he'd remember me. Now, when the train stopped to change engines at Harmon an hour later, it was raining, thunderstorm. I pulled my hat down over my eyes, raised my coat collar around my face, and became just another shadowy figure hurrying to get out of the rain. I crossed the platform unnoticed, and 10 minutes later I was on a train going southbound, returning to New York. I picked up my car at the parking lot and drove out to my house on the cliff. Parking on a side road, I climbed up the hill on foot. By now the rain was coming down in sheets. Lightning split the sky and thunder crashed around me. I could see the light from my house perched at the edge of the cliff. Now Bill's car was parked on the driveway, pointed downhill. Light came from the living room. I crept through the shrubbery to a window. There they were, Bill and Helen. My partner and my wife, sitting side by side on the divan. He drinking my whiskey, comfortable and warm, while I, the unwanted, was standing outside in the storm. How I hated him at that moment. I went back to Bill's car, crept beneath it, and went to work. The sound of the storm covered the noise of my tools as I disconnected the brakes. And I was finished. And none too soon, for suddenly the front door opened, and Bill stood framed in the light of the doorway with Helen behind him.
It's a bad night for us, but we'll never get another chance like this one, Helen.
Well, all right, but come back quickly, Bill. I'm nervous.
Oh, nothing to be nervous about. John is halfway to Buffalo by now. A perfect opportunity to go over our plans with Bates.
All right, go ahead then. But hurry.
I'll have Bates back here in a jiffy.
Bates. He was going to fetch Bates, undoubtedly a hired killer. I laughed inwardly as the car got started. I could see Helen watching it as it picked up speed on the steep downgrades. Something was wrong now, and she knew it.
Bill, not the car!
Too late. The car was roaring downhill out of control, charging for the lip of the cliff. There was a crash and it smashed through the guardrail.
Oh, poor Bill. I always say, protect me from my friends, and I'll take care of my enemies. Such a nice guy, too. Who would have thought he'd go falling for a cliff? But there you are. There's no accounting for tastes.
There's no accounting for the people in this story, that's what. Such terrible people.
Oh, Mary, wait till you meet Bates. He's a boy. He's really going to make our characters dance. Yeah, he's going to put them in the groove. Or do I mean grave?
You don't know what you mean. And it seems to me, Mr. Host, that life is complicated enough without your making it more so. Well, look at what I had to do yesterday. Clean the house, do the Monday wash, and cook 3 meals in the bargain. Yes, and you'd be surprised at the big help I got from Lipton tea. You see, when I had a moment to relax, I'd make myself a cup of Lipton's. Such an easy thing to do, and it did me a world of good. That brisk flavor makes Lipton such a cheering, satisfying drink. It really perks you up. It's never wishy-washy. Of course, I know that lots of folks serve Lipton tea at mealtimes and serve it to their guests, too. But, friends, you really should try helping yourself through the day with a good hot cup of brisk-flavored Lipton tea. Yes, treat yourself to Liptons when you've got a moment to relax.
Well, don't relax yet. First, let's go back to that tiff on the cliff where John Keeler has just killed his business partner. I'm just itching to know what's going to happen to his wife. She's standing by the shattered fence, peering down the side of the cliff into the darkness. And John, he's creeping up behind her. Look out, Helen.
He's dead, Helen.
Oh!
It's a sheer drop of 400 feet to the bottom.
John, I thought... John, you said you were going to Buffalo.
I am going to Buffalo, Helen, after I finish my business here.
Well, Bill, the car...
It was a pity about the brakes. They must have come disconnected.
Disconnected?
Accidents will happen, Helen.
John, you killed him.
You and Bill thought you had pulled the wool over my eyes. Well, I fooled you.
Stay away from me.
I'm going to throw you over the cliff. I'm going to send you to join your lover.
You can't do that.
Tomorrow they'll find your bodies. They'll think you were thrown clear of the car when it crashed. They'll call it an unfortunate accident.
No, please,
Careful,
John.
Helen, you're at the edge. There's nothing behind you.
John, don't touch me, John!
Goodbye, Helen. If I had any feeling at that moment, it was a feeling of satisfaction. I, the failure, had committed the perfect crime. My scheme was flawless. I walked down the hill to my car, changed my clothes, and drove to the airport. As Roger Dunham, I boarded the plane for Rochester at 9:30 that night. Just as I'd planned it, we arrived at that city well ahead of my train. I was waiting when the long line of sleeping cars pulled in at the Rochester station platform. I boarded the train. My drawing room was just as I had left it at Harmon. I sank down in a seat, removed my coat and shoes. I looked at my watch. It was midnight. Come in.
Beg pardon, sir. It's midnight, sir.
Oh, midnight? Really? Oh, thanks for bringing the milk.
It's lukewarm, sir, just like you asked for it.
Thank you, Porter. In Buffalo, I went to my usual hotel, checked in, went to sleep. Oddly enough, I slept well that night. A deep, dreamless sleep. In fact, I overslept. For when I wakened, it was broad daylight and the phone was ringing. I struggled out of bed, lifted the receiver. Hello.
This is the long-distance operator. I have a New York City call for Mr. John Keeler.
This is Mr. Keeler speaking.
One moment, please. Here's your party. Mr. Keeler?
Yes?
This is Miss Jackson. I've just arrived at the office. Mr. Keeler, I don't know how to tell you. The police.
What about the police?
They're here in the office. They want you to return at once.
Miss Keeler, what's going on there?
Mr. Sloan and your wife. Both of them are dead, Mr. Keeler.
Dead?
Mr. Sloan's car went off the cliff near your house last night. The accident was discovered this morning.
Accident? You say it was an accident?
It must have been an accident, Mr. Keeler.
She thought it was an accident. Now, if only the police thought likewise. I told my secretary I'd take the first plane back to the city, and I hung up. A few hours later, I reached New York, hurried to my office.
There's a detective waiting in your office, Mr. Keeler.
A detective?
He said he had to see you.
A detective. This was the test. I pulled myself together and opened the door to my office.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes. I understand you're from police headquarters.
Jerome is the name, sir. Assistant Inspector.
How do you do, sir?
We won't take up much of your time, Mr. Keeler. It's an open and shut case.
How do you mean that?
Well, stormy night, slippery road, bad brakes. Obviously an accident. I'm very sorry.
I nodded at the detective, and all the while I was laughing inwardly. He sat there, the very symbol of the law, and offered me official sympathy. No question of clues, nothing overlooked, nothing to fear. Not now. I, the weakling, had committed the perfect crime. Yes, Miss Jackson.
Mr. Keeler, there's a man out here to see you.
Send him away.
He won't go. He says you don't know him, but it's extremely important.
What's his name?
His name is Bates, Mr. Keeler. William Bates.
Bates. The hired killer. I told my secretary I'd see him. I went into the outer office. Bates was sitting on one of the chairs with an open briefcase on his lap. He was a big man, tough looking.
I read the news in the morning paper, Mr. Keeler. Too bad. That was a tough break.
Yes, was.
I didn't know if I should go after you now, but, well, after all, I'm a businessman. My time is money.
I'm sure it is, but why tell me about it? You certainly don't expect me to pay you.
Why not? They're your plans.
My plans?
Look at them. Here they are. Why, they've even got your name on them.
I didn't know whether I could trust my ears, whether I could believe my vision. Bates drew a roll of architectural drawings out of his briefcase and shoved them at me.
Look at them. There it is in your partner's handwriting. Plans for the new Keeler house.
Who are you?
I told you. My name is Bates. I'm a building contractor. Your partner and your wife insisted that the whole job had to be done in secret.
In secret?
They said something about you having just come out of a sanitarium. They wanted the whole thing to be a big surprise.
My mind was reeling. The secret meetings that led me to suspect Bill and Helen. Those meetings were to go over the plans for a house. My house and Helen's. I had killed my best friend and my wife. Inspector Jerome, I want to confess. I killed them.
Killed them? Killed who?
Don't look at me like that. You know who I'm talking about. My partner and my wife. I killed them last night. Now I'm ready to take my punishment.
Now, calm down, Mr. Keeler. You've had a hard time. We realize this thing has been a great shock.
What are you talking about?
The homicide squad doesn't jump to hasty conclusions, Mr. Keeler. We've made a thorough checkup on your background.
What's my background got to do with it?
Well, we know you spent 3 months in a sanatorium recuperating from a nervous collapse. Now, on top of that, this unfortunate accident.
It wasn't an accident. I killed them.
We checked every movement you made since you left the office yesterday.
Then you must know.
We know you took the 5 o'clock train to Buffalo. The porter on your Pullman had no trouble recalling you. Why, he even told us how he brought you a glass of milk at midnight. You were a good 200 miles away from New York when the accident happened.
The detective went away, shaking his head. Sympathetically. My mind was in a turmoil. I had committed the perfect crime, and it had boomeranged. I went home. The house on the cliff was empty. Everywhere I looked, I saw Helen. Her photograph on my desk. Her red-tipped cigarettes still in the ashtrays. 2 half-empty cocktail glasses side by side on the living room table. There was desolation in the house. Emptiness. Loneliness. And it would be like this for the rest of my life. But there was one way out. I always kept a loaded gun in the desk. I took it out of the drawer in my hand. Here was my punishment. This time I couldn't fail. I placed the gun against my chest and pulled the trigger. I fell by the desk and lay there, where I am now, staining the carpet with my blood. I was dying, and I was glad of it. And then I remembered the plane reservation to Rochester. I could tell the police when they came, and they could check that, and they would know that I was guilty. But they came too late. They bent over me. I tried to tell them. I tried.
Riley, he's trying to say something.
Yeah, poor guy. He's too far gone to talk.
Now I'm lying here on the carpet, waiting to die, with my guilt locked up inside me. I can see a new figure among the police, a man in civilian dress with a small black bag in his hand.
How long is it since this man was discovered in this condition, officer?
About half an hour, Doc.
He's in very bad shape.
Will he live, Doc? Will he recover?
Oh, yes. He may recover, but only partially.
Partially? How do you mean, Doc?
Notice his inability to move so much as a finger. Notice how only his lips move, trying to form words without being able to speak. The bullet must have injured his spinal cord. This man is paralyzed. Totally paralyzed. So now I know. I'm paralyzed. I'm not going to die. And yet I can see the policemen moving carefully about the room. And I hear them speaking softly as one speaks in the presence of the dead. So I've failed again. For the last time. Because I know my fate now. To live in this living death, alone with my guilt, forever. That is my punishment.
Poor old John Keeler. Who would have thought his spinal cord could have tied him up in knots? Not so nice for John. He started out as a Keeler, tried to be a Keeler dealer, but got all wound up.
Mr. Host, let's forget about that awful story, because there's something really important I'd like to talk about. The makers of Lipton tea and Lipton soup want me to remind all you folks of a debt that must be paid to our servicemen. A debt that can be paid in part by buying and continuing to buy victory bonds. You know, I think the best reason for buying bonds was given many, many years ago by one of the great statesmen of all time, by Abraham Lincoln, when he said, "Let us strive to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations." Yes, folks, that's just what we're helping to do when we invest in victory bonds. So keep on buying all that you can, won't you?
And now, friends, for those of you who like morals with your drama, here's one for tonight. Never mix your partner's business with your pleasure. For if you do, he may consider it a pleasure to give you the business. By the way, this month's Inner Sanctum Mystery novel is Devil in the Bush by Matthew Head. Yes, and next week's Inner Sanctum story, directed by Himan Brown and brought to you by Lipton Tea and Lipton Soup. Next week's story is about a genius, a photographer who believes that death can be beautiful. So he only takes pictures of people who are in the throes of dying. It's enough to make your camera shudder. And naturally, he has to arrange his models, arrange to have them die. So next Tuesday, bring along the kiddies and we'll make it a nice family picture. And now it's time to close the squeaking door. So, good night. Pleasant dreams.
Folks, cold weather and hot soup just seem to go together. And Lipton's noodle soup is the soup of the season. Yes, Lipton's is blessed with a fine chickeny flavor, and it has real fresh cooked goodness. It tastes just like the chicken noodle soup you'd make right in your own kitchen. The only difference is that Lipton's takes almost no time at all to prepare. So if your family likes chickeny-tasting soup that's brimming with tender golden egg noodles, then don't forget to ask for Lipton's Noodle Soup. Yes, friends, and don't forget to tune in next week for another Inner Sanctum Mystery.
This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Soup present Inner Sanctum Mystery. Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum. Here's your host at the creaking door. Through these portals pass the world's most horrified people. Oh, what's the matter? Did my happy medium startle you? Sorry, I keep him around to get in the right spirit, you know. Oh, by the way, if you feel a cold, thin sliver of steel across your neck in the next half hour, sit perfectly still. Someone's got an edge on you.
Gracious, Mr. Host, I'm afraid I'd have to move fast.
No, Mary, you must sit still. You wouldn't want to lose your head.
Well, I'll remember your advice, Mr. Host. But right now, I have some advice for our Lipton listeners. You know, a teapot can't talk. But if it could, I think it would tell you the same thing that I do about making tea. I think it would probably say, the most delicious tea is the tea with the most flavor. And I'll bet it would cast its vote, as so many folks do, for Lipton tea. Because Lipton's has that grand, brisk flavor, the flavor that's so different from other teas, the flavor that fills your cup with pleasure. You'll taste a world of tangy, full-bodied goodness in Lipton's. It's tea at its tastiest. So make that next pot of tea you brew at your house Lipton tea.
And now here's a little tale of horror that speaks for itself. The Edge of Death. Written by Frederick Matho and starring Larry Haynes in the role of Ralph. We're going to tell you of a night Satan played a game of murder along a deserted strip of Manhattan's waterfront. For his sport, he chose two friends. For his victim, a woman. And the weapon he suggested he had long ago placed in the hands of another murderer. The weapon was a long, slender, graceful rapier, which first drew blood at the hand of Rasputin, the mad monk of Russia.
Denton, open it. Open up. Denton.
Ralph Fitkin. Well, come on in, man. What's the matter with you? You're soaked. No hat, no coat.
Denton, you're my best friend, my only friend. You've got to help me.
I just got back from Chicago. I was going to drop over to your shop a little later.
You got back too late. You could have helped me. No, it's too late.
Well, what's the matter, Ralph? What have you done? Well, what's that in the package? Why, it's the antique sword I gave you when you were married. Ralph!
Naked steel always looks different. Coated with blood.
Ralph, you fool. You didn't...
Yes. I just pierced a woman's heart with that rapier. About 15 minutes ago.
Warned you about your temper ever since we were kids. You almost killed me once, do you remember?
You warned me about my hobby, too. You said I had a
psychosis. That's what we psychiatrists call it. Your unnatural love of steel blades, your worship of ancient weapons and tempered steel. It's off balance.
There's nothing in the world more beautiful than a piece of true hand-forged steel. It's an art as old as man.
Yes, I know. We've been over all that before, but now you're a murderer. And I want to know everything that happened.
It's too late, Denton. I only
Maybe I can dig something out of you that might help your defense. Now, Ralph, close your eyes. Close your eyes and let your mind wander. Tell me the first image you get. Tell me every detail, no matter what.
I see the wedding. Here at your house. The guests have left. Ingrid is blonde and beautiful in white satin. She's standing beside me. And you come toward me with a package.
Denton, it was so good of you to make such a beautiful wedding for us. You are the best man ever.
Oh, no. Maybe the second best man ever. Ralph was best today.
Well, you gave me some stiff competition, then.
I've got another wedding present for you, Ralph. I waited till now to bring it out because I didn't think the others would understand. Here, open it. Well, do you like it, Ralph? Is it a good one?
This is a good one. Why, it's the most beautiful rapier I've ever seen. What, the balance and the lines. Magnificent steel. Look, Ingrid. Isn't it wonderful?
It will be the very nicest sword in your collection, darling, as well as your last.
His last?
Oh, yes, then. I promised Ingrid no more auction.
And he'll keep his promise this time. I'm going to change, darling. Won't take me long.
All right, darling, hurry.
You really like that blade, don't you, Ralph?
Like it. It's beautiful. Where did you find it?
I saw it yesterday in a small, junky antique shop in the village. Little Russian fellow runs it.
Oh, did he tell you anything about the blade? I mean, where he got it?
No, but he said it was Russian. He said the hilt was black lacquer on rosewood and the steel was superior.
He said something there.
He mumbled on about wanting to get rid of it before the full moon. Something about it being an evil thing. He claimed it once belonged to Rasputin, the mad monk of Russia.
Say, I wonder if it did.
I doubt it. Anyhow, he finished by saying that whoever owned it would have evil luck, and failing to get rid of it before the full moon, would die by violence. I'll take it back to him if you like, Ralph.
No, not on your life, then. But don't mention that nonsense to Ingrid, will you?
I remember all that myself, Ralph. I left for Chicago that night. Now, what's the next thing that comes to your mind as important?
Well, about 3 weeks ago, I was working on some knives in the shop. Ingrid had left. I was alone. The shop door opened, and she was there.
She? Who, Ralph?
Stasha. She was beautiful. Tall. White as marble. Dressed in black. And beautiful.
I beg your pardon. What did you say?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You said beautiful. There's no cause to be embarrassed. I have heard this said before.
What can I do for you, Miss...
Karloff. Stasia Karloff. You own something that I would like to buy.
Oh, what is it?
A rapier. A Russian rapier. I saw it in your window as I passed.
It's not for sale.
Oh, really? Are you sure? I will pay you well. Say $100.
Sorry.
Very well. Perhaps you might change your mind. Here. Here is my card. Come and see me if you do.
Well, thanks, but I...
Shall we say before the next full moon, Ralph?
Ralph, if it weren't for that blood-stained rapier on the table, I'd say you were lying. How could this woman know your name or anything about the legend of the rapier?
I know how.
What happened then, Ralph?
I've handled steel all my life. I've forged it, pounded it, tempered it, ground it to razor edge, and I've never cut myself. After Stasha left, I put the rapier to the stone. And as I worked, I kept seeing her eyes in the forge fire, glinting with evil beauty. Kept hearing her voice.
Ralph, shall we say before the full moon?
I turned suddenly to see if she was there, and I tripped. The rapier fell, and I fell against the upturned point. Ah! Oh!
Rolf, what's happened? Rolf!
I'm all right. Pull it out. Straight out.
Oh, no. No, I can't do that.
All right, I'll do it then. I'll do it.
Oh. Rolf, your arm is all blood.
Oh, it's not bad. It just passed through the flesh. Call Dr. Burns.
Oh, those stupid knives. Why don't you get rid of them?
Well, Ingrid phoned. It crept over me the deadening certainty that my fate was tied to Stasha Karloff's. That death was lunging at us with Rasputin's rapier, and I was unarmed. I told Ingrid about the woman, I told her about Stasia's offer of $100 for the blade. I shouldn't have.
And to turn down $100 for it, Ralph, that's the limit.
Ingrid, I can't expect everyone to understand some things about my character, but I do expect you to try.
I think I do understand, Ralph. I think you didn't want to sell that thing because you want that woman to come back.
That was your first quarrel, Ralph?
Yes. There were lots more. Things got worse. We quarreled a lot. It wasn't Ingrid's fault. I was changing. I kept thinking of Stasia. Her eyes mocked me. I tore up a card in anger, but I'd memorized the address. It was an old Dutch mansion on Littner Street. I had to see her again. There was a light in the house, and oddly enough, the front door was open a bit. I rang a long time, but no one answered. I obeyed an impulse and walked in. There was a coal fire going in the high-ceilinged living room. It cast dancing shadows on a life-sized oil painting above. A cold hand gripped my heart when I saw that painting. It was the painting of a man in a monk's habit, and his gnarled hand rested on the hilt of a jeweled rapier of exquisite beauty.
Yes, the man in the picture is long dead. But his mad spirit is in this room. It laughs from within you, Rolf Wittkuhn. It has seized your body.
Stasia.
You know, if I were Ralph, I wouldn't be seen dead with somebody else's spirit. You can't tell what will happen to a man when the spirit moves him.
Goodness, Mr. Host. That sword has certainly brought Rolf bad luck.
Yes, Mary. It got him in trouble right up to the hilt. And we're only halfway through the story.
Oh, yes, there's still a lot more excitement to look forward to. And I think looking forward to things is so much fun. For instance, imagine you're brewing up a pot of Lipton tea. Well, you know there's enjoyment ahead just as soon as that water starts bubbling in the tea kettle. The very sound of it is warm and cheerful and friendly, like Lipton's itself. And then when you lift that cup to your lips, oh, there's such a deep-down satisfaction in Lipton's brisk flavor because it's so mellow and satisfying, brimming with lively, full-bodied goodness. Yes, all those little promises of enjoyment are completely fulfilled in your first delicious sip of brisk-flavored Lipton tea.
Well, you certainly have a point there, Mary. But now, back to Ralph Wittgen as he tells his friend the events leading to the murder he has committed tonight. He's telling of his first visit to the strange house of Stasia Kassoff.
So the Kassoff woman convinced you that the spirit or the ghost of Rasputin had taken possession of your body, and you fell for it.
Oh, I fought against believing it, Denton. But it did explain so many of the strange promptings that had been stirring me all up inside.
Did she say anything more about it?
No. I turned to face her. She was a smiling column of white beauty, sheathed in black satin. Miss Kassoff, how is it?
Stasia. Call me Stasia.
How is it you know my name? What do you know about the rapier?
Does it matter? You have changed your mind, perhaps? About selling me your rapier?
No, I came to ask you about it.
Oh, you came because you are confused. We will discuss it. But first, let us have some tea. Yes?
I examined the room while she was out of it. On the wall across from the fireplace were 5 oil paintings. All of them portraits of men. At first, I thought the light was playing tricks. It wasn't. Each face was painted with closed eyes. Each was a study in sleep or death.
You like my painting? Come and sit down. We'll have tea and talk.
Who are those men you painted, Stasia?
The 5 men you see in those paintings, each own the rapier you now possess.
Good Lord. Then they're...
Dead.
And the dates on the paintings?
Those are the dates on which they died, Rolf. Each on a day of the full moon. Each kept the rapier beyond the time he should have. More tea?
Stasia's eyes were eager and wide. My ears began to ring. I recall setting the cup down. I remember Stasia's voice a long way off.
Russian tea strong, my friend, and so are Russian legends.
This is all so fantastic, Ralph. Are you sure it wasn't something you dreamed?
Something I dreamed? No, she drugged me. It was no dream. Those portraits were no dream. The painting of Rasputin was no dream. They were there when I woke. Stasia was gone. The fire was out. My head ached. There was an easel near the lamp. It hadn't been there before. I shuffled toward it. There was a fresh painting on the easel. I stared at the face before me. Its eyes were closed in sleep. The face was mine. There was a date painted in it. It was January 15th.
Why?
Yes, that's tonight. I couldn't find Stasia, so I dashed out of the house, cursing like a madman. It was 4 a.m. when I reached home. Ingrid was waiting for me. She was crying.
Rolf! Rolf, darling, where have you been?
Why? What difference does it make?
You've been to see that Karloff woman.
Yes, I've been to see that Karloff woman.
Oh.
I had to. I'm losing my mind, Ingrid. Something's trying to kill me. That woman knows about it. She knows how and when it'll happen. And the funny thing is, I don't care anymore. I don't care.
Rolf, where are you going?
Back to the shop. Back to that cursed rapier. In the shop, I tried to reason the thing out. I was toying with the rapier. There was a tiny green speck on the black hilt. Idly, I picked at it with my thumbnail, and a chip of lacquer snapped off. The hilt was supposed to be wood. But here was what looked like a large emerald. My heart pounding, I chipped and picked at the lacquer until bit by bit I uncovered the most dazzling and richly wrought collection of jewels I'd ever seen. Set in solid gold were pearls, rubies, emeralds, and a magnificent star sapphire. This was the bejeweled blade that Rasputin held in his hand in Stasia's painting. This was Rasputin's rapier. I returned to Stasia's house. Like the first night, the door was ajar. Like the first night, I walked in. I walked into the living room. I looked about. Nothing had changed. Nothing, that is, except that mine was the 6th painting, now hung beside the others. And the easel already had a fresh canvas. Stasia was already painting a new portrait. The face was indistinct, but the date was clear. 1 lunar month from tonight. I gave up and walked home with the rapier under my arm. It was drizzling and foggy along the waterfront, and I was sick inside. I kept hearing Stasia's voice locked in my brain.
Tonight is the last night you may own the rapier, Rolf. But there is a way out.
A way out? How? There's no way out as long as either of us lives.
There is a way out, Rolf. Kill her and come to me. Tonight is the night of the full moon, Rolf. If I own the rapier, you will be safe. Kill her, Rolf. Kill her and come to me.
Somebody's following me. A woman. I could hear her high heels on the cobblestones. I'd just passed that little blind alley. You know, the one about a block away from my shop. I decided to trick her. I stopped short. I spun around and caught sight of a woman in black as she darted into the alley. It was Stasia, and there was no exit from that alley. I tiptoed to the entrance and leaped into its shadows. All I could see was a large, empty carton against the far wall. She had to be behind it. I gripped the jeweled handle of the rapier until it burned my hand. Only one searing thought in my tired mind. Stasia must die. I took a deep breath and drew the needle-pointed steel back, aimed at where I judged a heart to be, and thrust. I drew the blade out, and her body slumped forward. I lit a match to see her face. But it wasn't Stasia Karloff I had killed. It was Ingrid. My wife. Ingrid.
Stasia, it worked. My plan worked. Ralph reacted just as I planned it.
You mean he did it? Killed her?
A psychological masterpiece. He told me the whole story at my office 10 minutes ago. He killed her thinking it was you.
And now that she is gone, you are happy. You will love me and forget her then.
Oh, perfect, perfect. She picked that stupid fool instead of me. Now she's dead, and he'll die too.
Oh, Denton, I'm so glad. I would do anything for
Everything
you.
went like clockwork. This rapier I found in your attic, the legend I made up, the phony paintings of former owners, your flirtation, perfect, perfect. The perfect murder, I've done it.
Did my acting please you, Denton?
Oh, you were magnificent, but there's only one weakness to my plan, Stasia.
What is it?
When Ralph is picked up, there must be no way for anyone to find out that you and I know each other, Stasia.
I know, and no one will know, darling.
Ralph's fingerprints are still on this rapier. He'll be electrocuted for one murder. Might as well be for two.
Denton! No! I love you!
I'm sorry, Stasia!
I love you. Still. I will wait for you.
Very neat stroke, Denton.
Ralph!
I heard everything you said, Denton. But I didn't have to, I knew. No, don't move. The gun is faster than a rapier.
How did you know, Ralph? Something I said tonight?
No. No, something I saw. Stasia loved you. The painting I saw on her easel tonight, the one I told you she'd begun, was your portrait. The only way I knew was because, as an artist, she was conscious of the scar on your forehead. She painted that in first.
The scar you gave me as a kid. Oh, you've a lot more brains than I gave you credit for, but at least we'll burn together.
Sorry, Denton, I'll have to decline that honor.
Oh! Ralph, am I too late?
Ingrid, no, you're dead. Ralph, everything you told me at my house tonight was a lie.
No, Denton. Your plan almost worked. I told you the truth. Except for the part about murdering Ingrid.
You should have studied psychiatry, Ralph.
I did, Denton. I had a good teacher. You.
Are we going home soon, darling? You seem so far away, Rolf. Is anything wrong?
No. I've been thinking about Denton. Odd the way things turned out. He made up that story about the rapier and its belonging to Rasputin and its owners dying on the night of the full moon.
You don't believe it, do you?
No. But what he thought was a cheap blade turns out to be a priceless treasure. It matches the one Rasputin held in his hand in the painting.
That was coincidence, darling. Come on, now put your work away. Let's go home. It's late.
Mm-hmm.
Such a beautiful night, Rolf. Let's walk home.
All right. You know that painting Stasia started of Denton, the one that gave us plot away?
Yes?
It had a date on it. I wonder what ghostly hand guided her brush as she wrote that date.
Why?
The date she wrote was today's. There's a full moon. And tonight was the night Denton was electrocuted.
Well, wouldn't you say that's a story which gets down to fine points? Happy ending, too. Yes, you get a ghost-to-ghost hookup between Stasia and Denton. Ralph and Ingrid get an Exhibit A worth a few bucks and go back to the old grind.
Well, I'm glad Denton's plot didn't work.
Yes, Mary, but if it had, Ralph would have had a plot of his own, in a cemetery. After all, that's one of the best-selling plots I know of.
Oh, nonsense, Mr. Host. If you think that's the kind of thought we want to leave our Lipton listeners with, you're quite wrong. Here's a much better thought for folks to carry away with them. Tomorrow, when you visit the grocer's, get a package of Lipton tea. Buy it, try it, and see if you don't agree that Lipton's brisk flavor gives you extra enjoyment. Oh, yes, there's a great treat in store for you when you first taste Lipton's full-bodied, zestful goodness. Ask your grocer for a package of Lipton tea tomorrow.
And now, friends, in case you're wondering, we do have a moral for tonight's story. It's short and sharp. Knife can be beautiful if you keep your temper. And look out for people with an axe to grind. They may be trying to get ahead of you. Oh, by the way, this month's Inner Sanctum Mystery novel is The Pavilion by Hilda Lawrence. And next week, the makers of Lipton Tea and Lipton Soup bring you another grisly Inner Sanctum tale, directed by Himan Brown, and titled The Confession. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have an appointment with Stasia and Denton. Yes, they've got the concession for hand-forged hinges where it's hotter than the hinges of... Until next Tuesday, then. Good night. Pleasant dreams.
Got tomorrow's meal on your mind? Well, how about letting me make a suggestion? Now, here's a real menu masterpiece that the whole family will love. It's Lipton's Noodle Soup, a grand soup chock full of wonderful fresh-cooked chickeny goodness. Lipton's Noodle Soup is prepared with ease, ready to please in just a few quick minutes. It's economical, too. It costs less and makes lots more than canned soups. So ask your grocer for Lipton's Noodle Soup Mix. And don't forget to tune in next Tuesday night for another Inner Sanctum Mystery.
This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.